The city of Albany has a problem with allowing religious speech to occur on private property. I'd like to be able to give their case, more substance, if you will, but it's just simply not there. This is a private property. It's been on a private easement that was granted about 50 years ago as a condition for the property to be deeded over to the city. The city agreed to that condition, agreed to the easement. The easement is private property owned by the Lions Club. So the issue here is not the city having a legitimate reason to remove the cross. It violates the property rights of the owners of that private easement. It violates the contract, the terms of them receiving the property. It violates the First Amendment religious freedom, free exercise rights of the owners of that easement, the members of the Lions Club, that community, as well as the free speech rights of the Lions Club. So this is just outright, blatant state hostility and discrimination against religion, pure and simple. The easement, the property was donated with the easement, allowing the cross to be on the private easement back in 1971. And at the time, the city had no problem with that. In fact, they said, yes, this is no problem. This is valid. We have no problem with this at all. But in 2016, an atheist group that wants freedom from religion instead of freedom of religion began to put pressure on the city. And then the city began to then harass the private owners of this cross and this land that the cross is on. In fact, they even went so far as to have the power cut off so that it could not be lit up on Christmas or Easter. And their final desperate move has been to try to use eminent domain to take control of that property and remove the cross. It's simply and solely based upon bigotry and hatred towards the cross and the messaging of the cross. It's nothing to do with a valid, legitimate public purpose. If this was a generic monument to war veterans, it wouldn't be removed. If it was some kind of artistic display, it wouldn't be removed. If there was a giant LGBT flag or something like that, this city would embrace it, no problem. So it's specifically because of the viewpoint and the religious viewpoint and perspective of the cross. That's their agenda. That's what they want removed. It is a vicious, blatant, anti-constitutional, discriminatory action by the city of Albany. The growing intolerance towards free speech and freedom of thought and ideas is something that's actually even compelling people to leave states like New York, California, Oregon, and Washington. The feeling of hostility and bigotry against people because of their faith, particularly the Christian community, is something that is relatively new. It's really come to the surface just within the last few decades, and it's specifically spiked within the last decade itself. We've seen religious intolerance against the Jewish community in the past. Unfortunately, it's spiking. Anti-Semitism is unbelievably blatant and open in our country, our universities, but also in other forums as well. So as this happens, I believe that there's going to be greater and greater concern and more priority in terms of choosing politicians who are going to be sensitive towards religious freedom and not give in to the leftist extremist ideology, meaning believing that free speech is okay so long as it agrees with us. Otherwise, we're going to trounce it. There's no room for that kind of thinking when you truly respect the Constitution and the First Amendment. Free speech does not allow government to be discriminatory towards private viewpoint, especially because they don't like the religious nature or perspective of that viewpoint.